Welcome to the Tech Magic Labs channel. This channel aspires to share the magic and wonder of technology. This is our developer productivity series, focused on setting up a macOS computer for development purposes, starting with our terminal, or specifically our shell. When you first get your machine or you open your terminal, it probably look like this: boring, unproductive, uninformative. We can do better. In this video, we're going to show you how you can convert your terminal from looking something like this to something more like this. Information around color coding our path, some Git information, color coding whether it's a folder, specific type of file, and also in this case, I have a Python virtual environment, and I have the time on the other side. And you don't see it right now, but it also provides me ability to show the runtime of the last command. So this is a much more helpful and informative shell, which will boost your productivity, as you'll see. First, let's do the tell. What are we talking about today? Shells. Shells are a command line interface, or CLI, that allow users to interact with the computer's operating system by typing rather than moving a mouse on a GUI or graphical user interface. And a lot of the IDEs, such as VS Code or PyCharm or Atom, come with integrated shells and terminals, or the new one, Z. Z is the new IDE in the block. They all come with integrated terminals, which give you access to a shell right there from your IDE as you code away. So we're going to be using and looking at setting up the Z shell or Zish. So what is it? Z shell is the extended version of the Bourne shell, also known as the Bash shell, Born Again shell, with many improvements on top of it, and a thriving plugin ecosystem, as we'll see. To sum it up, it's an interactive shell, which is how we're going to use it. And you can also use it as a shell scripting tool. In my case, I just use mostly Bash for my shell scripts, but Zish as my interactive shell. So why Zish? So back in 2019, at Apple's developer conference, they announced that with the fall 2019 Catalina version of macOS, Z shell would replace Bash as the default shell command language interpreter. The details are all coming down to licenses and so on. I'll include links to them in the resources section at the bottom of the video description. But in essence, what you have to know is if you got a macOS after fall 2019, all the way up to now, they all come with Z shell as the default shell in your terminal. Now, of course, Bash is there, as we'll see, and you can revert back. But for me personally, this was an opportunity to learn about Z shell, and I've been a convert ever since, and I use Z shell to this day. Hence why this video, I start with the Z shell. Now, let's get to the interactive part of this video. In this part, I'm going to walk you through what it takes to set up the Z shell to what I showed earlier with the customizations, themes, and plugins that I recommend. And this is going to be a pretty manual process. Note, I have automated this down to a less than 10-minute, 5-minute process, but for learning purposes, we're going to walk through all these details so you can follow along if you've never set up your shell or you want to set it up again with some of these recommendations. So let's switch over to our terminal. All right, so we are now at our terminal, and let's see what is our, so this is how we can check what our current shell is. Do note, I have effectively nuked my entire setup, and I'm doing this from scratch. I don't have the luxury of setting up a brand new machine, so I'm just doing on my existing. Let's see how well this goes. So, okay, so I've pretty much reverted everything back. I believe this is the version that comes pre-installed. Yep. I always thought that this meant it was running a non-ARM configured version, but some recent Googling has corrected my understanding. Regardless, when you're using older versions of macOS, uh, it might come already. You might already it'll ship with an outdated Z shell, right? So it is to your benefit, to your advantage to install the latest via Homebrew. So assuming you have Homebrew installed, there'll be another video to walk through that, but we have Homebrew installed and we should have Z shell already installed. And how I can check that, or how you can check that, is running this command that shows you two different versions. So bin this shell, and if I go to, I think it's here. Come on, let's go pt homebrew bin Z shell. Right. So again, just to highlight the difference. Here, there's no difference. We are effectively running the same version, but if you are running an older one, it's always behooves you to install through Homebrew, which I have. And of course, the instruction, the command to install it through Homebrew is brew install tish. And we'll just run that. But yeah, the other big difference is, yeah. So in my case, it's already installed. But yeah, the other big difference is that here it says x86 versus ARM. Apparently, it's not really the case that this is using a non-ARM version, and this is. Again, I'll point to some resources I found recently that says that that's not the case, but that was initially my understanding, which is kind of weird. Why would Apple ship such a non-ARM version of a crucial piece of software, which they set as default? Anyways, moving on. So what have we done? At this point, we should have installed Zish through Homebrew. Homebrew is another command line tool, which makes it very nice to install both CLI and GUI applications on your computer. So highly recommend it. I've pretty much have automated all of my, or codified rather, all of my application installations. Okay, now that we've installed that, what we need to do is switch over our current shell. Remember, I started this by running this. So this tells us that we're running our default shell, right? As in when you open a new terminal, like as in I'm just show you right now. So Command T, right? It's very small. There we go. Let's make that large. If we run echo shell, we should see that this is the version. And again, right? Convinced? Cool. Now coming back to this, what do we want to do? We actually want to change it, right? So something else to keep in mind is when you go into here, cat etc shells, you can see all the shells that ship with your operating system. Now remember when back to the beginning when I was explaining that what Apple changed was that this was no longer the default, but Z shell would be the default, right? So again, if you're a diehard Bash fan, which there's many reasons to be, you can revert back to this. So now the way to run this command, leave, is using the chsh change shell. And of course, I'm going to forget, so I will show you what I do. A big part of also what I'm trying to show you is usually, to be frank, my own workflow. I don't always remember all these things, but I have tools like TLDR, which is another great tool for you to check out, also installed through Homebrew, which makes it super easy. It's a much nicer version of the man pages, which gives you everything under the sun, but then again, it gives you everything under the sun, right? But the important part that we want to know is I want to be able to change my shell for my current user. So this is how we do it. Set a specific login shell for the current user, chs-s, and path to shell. So first, let's get our path to shell. So we already figured out that through Homebrew, this is there and installed and ready to be used. So all I have to do is, I believe I have to do sudo chss -s, specifying the shell, now the path to it that we just figured out. And of course, we have to put in your user password. Changing shell for root. Okay, then I think that was silly. I think I just got to run this. There we go. Oh, of course, I made a mistake. Let's do that again. There we go. So now I have switched over. How do I verify that this has actually been switched over? So one thing I like to do is, let's just do sanity check. Well, this will tell us this because we haven't opened a new shell. I like to do exec shell. And this again, okay, that didn't really work. Exec basically reruns the following the command after it from the bash shell. I usually use it if I've updated my zshrc or some zsh configuration, and usually applies right away. In this case, not necessarily the case. So let's go back, open a new shell. Let's take a look. Of course, this doesn't work. Well, this is part of the goal of this video, show you how usually messy these things are. So at this point, I'm going to pause it and figure out where I've gone wrong. Okay. I figured out what I was missing. So when I exec the Z shell again, effectively rerunning it, I thought that it would update the shell environment variable. It actually didn't. As I learned, the shell environment variable is set at actual login time of the user, which means I'd have to close all my terminals and reopen for that to take effect. But as a sanity test, I ran which zish, and that confirms to me that I am running the homebrew flavor of the Z shell, no longer the built-in flavor. So I know that my command worked, even though it continues to show. Let's just say this will work. So my advice to you is after you run the chsh command, close your terminal and reopen it. I'm just going to continue because I know that it's been set. Right. So now we have our Z shell. What can we do with it? Well, there's usually a zshrc file that we would need to create. So let's go ahead and create that. Again, in your circumstance, it might actually prompt you if you're switching to Z shell for the first time. It might prompt you, or it might come with a default zshrc file. The zshrc file, which sits in your home directory of your current user, essentially stores your configuration, right? So this will include aliases, functions, other plugins, themes, all of that is where you set this, right? So again, in my case, since I've nuked it, I'm actually going to go and I have found a starting version to essentially copy with some modification. So let me take the raw version of this, and I'm probably going to remove some things, and let's go. So let's create this. I like running Vim. I'm probably going to remove this. It has nothing to do with any of this. And I'm probably going to, I'll leave everything else except this one, which I don't think I've installed. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, there you go. So there is again, let me explain. So again, usually whenever I update my RC file, I will rerun Z shell through the exec command, and I can see that it was successfully loading the zshrc and failed at line 19 with the complaint, no such file directory of home loc. Okay, of course, because I was silly enough not to make a change. Okay, so let's turn this off. Yeah, do not, well, here's a tip, do not have hard-coded environment variable. Well, do not have hard-coded values, use environment variables where you can. So home, $home is something you can use. So to avoid some hard coding, let's see. Okay, let's save that and let's see what happens. Zish. Okay, there you go. So let me just cancel out of that. Let me go back in again. Yeah, so a little step ahead, but essentially here we've seen a path to our Oh My Zish folder. So coming back just to explain a little bit, OhmyZish is a open source community driven framework for managing your Zish configuration. So it has tons of plugins, tons of themes, because essentially Z shell by itself, or when you first get it, doesn't really have much, right? It's more the potential of to customize it and leverage a lot of the community driven themes and plugins is where the advantage comes in. So while we're on this topic, right, ohmyzish.sh, it's pretty easy to install. I will install it shortly, but I just want to show you, if you go to its repo, you can see it's quite an overwhelming list. My 2 cents here, and we're going to see, is just start with the handful of tools that you use and just leverage them, right? So for example, if your company uses Terraform, you can start by installing the Terraform plugin. We can just take a look what it does. So it comes with some pretty nice aliases, right? TF for Terraform, TFI for Terraform init, and so on. And it has some functions and some other configurations for our shell. And that's pretty much what, at the end of the day, all these are, right? They're just nice little wrappers that, yeah, if you were inclined to write and maintain on your own, but why not just leverage the communities, right? So that's what is a real advantage. And of course, we have a whole bunch of themes to your heart's content, of themes that you can pick and choose. So that's that. So we haven't installed OhmyZish, but because we've set it in our Zish configuration and upon restarting, so note that opening and closing or editing the Zish RC doesn't actually lead to any changes, right? My my terminal prompt has not changed. My shell has not changed. However, for that, we either need to open a brand new one, and just to show you, I'll open a new one, and there you go. It's going to tell me, hey, do you need to update it? I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to come back. This is why I just like running the exec-dish. It allows me to just keep it writing in the same shell without having to open another one. And unless you have weird edge cases like the one we were just seeing, let me just clear my history. Unless you are seeing some edge cases like the one we saw before, when you had to change the shell and then close your terminal and reopen it, most changes can be effectively done through the exec zish command. Okay, let's run it. That's interesting. So now nothing is happening. Maybe because I probably thinks it's running there. Let me close that. Let's go back. Okay, there we go. Sure, let's update it. Let's see if it'll actually install. This is pretty interesting. I was going to install it myself, but that's pretty cool. Okay. OMZ. I forget the exact command, so okay, I guess I can just do help. Let me see if OMZ. Yep, there you go. Cool. Another great example of why I love using TLDR. Just the color coding, the quick examples of the most common things to get used for. So let's see, do we have anything installed? Yeah. So essentially, this is the plugins that we just walked through in the GitHub. What has happened? Actually, let's take a step back and think about it. What actually happened when we were updating it, right? So if we go to LSDR, I'm in my terminal, right? It actually pulled the latest. So let's just go in there, and there should be a Git repo. There you go. And this is pulling on master. Just again, for confirmation, we can see the latest Git log is fix extract cst. We go up here, we go to the root of the repo. We can see that fix extract from 2 days ago, right? And so we can see that this is effectively what updating OhmyZish has done. You're just updating a Git repo that you've cloned locally, right? Again, we see plugins, we see themes, and all of that. Okay. Now, okay, so let's go back. Now, let's go back to our RC. And again, you don't see any changes to visual changes yet to my terminal. Let's start to make something change now, right? So just maybe I just skipped ahead earlier, but let's walk through this ZShrC file. So here we're essentially adding a path. There's a bin folder under our user's home directory. We're adding it that as well as the user local bin to our path so that executables under there can be easily accessible from anywhere in the terminal. We are creating or setting up the path to our OMyZish installation, right? Which we saw that it will automatically pick it up and actually install/update it. I didn't have it installed there. In my custom configuration, I've installed somewhere else, which I'll explain in a future video. And here is the theme. So, yep, so this is the theme. So now we just uncommented this. So we should see something change in our terminal after this refresh. It starts with here's where we can set up our plugins, right? Defaulting with sudo, but again, the plugins I just showed you, you can start. So here's an example: Rails, Git, TextMate, Ruby, Lighthouse. Start with what you have and expand from there. This is us actually sourcing the OMyZish shell, which does a whole bunch of other instantiations for us. There's a bunch of helper functions. Some of them are also super cool, like take is one of my favorites. I'll show you that later, as well as a bunch of other configurations that's related to OMyZish. And at this point is where our user configuration, custom aliasing, and so on comes in. This is actually a new command I haven't seen before, but we can unalias everything first, which is interesting. Yeah, so this person I copied it from essentially has some aliases, and then they have Zish syntax highlighting, which is one of my absolute favorite plugins. Right, so that's a pretty basic starting point for our Zish RC file, and of course you can make this as much more complex as you go. Okay, now again, nothing has changed. Let's refer. There you go. The first visual indication that we're actually making changes. So now maybe you'll start to believe what's happening. Okay, so we picked the Amuse theme, and this is what we have. Cool. I guess some type of time. Let's go into the OMyZish directory to see if there's any change. There you go. So look at that. So of course, in addition to getting time and some color coding in our directory, we also know that we're in a Git repo. And of course, notice that this has icons, which is great if you like that. I think, let me go and make another, I think, just for fun. Again, nothing changes upon saving. We have the exec again, and this is random theme resto loaded. So again, here it's all one single. Oh yeah, the other thing is this is one single. This is two lines, right? Where you get all your information on the top and you can run yours in the second. So let's just run it again for one more time just to see. And there you go. Now we've loaded the Kiwi theme, right? Yeah, a lot of details here. Now we're back to a two-line prompt with some explicitness, you know. So this is where you can go crazy. Totally up to you what you want to set. I have my preference, so let's gonna go to power level 10K. This is one of my favorite themes. Well, it's a theme I use today. So let's install the recommended, I think, yeah. Yeah, this is the beauty of it. So if you're using iTerm2, which I am, or Termix, which I don't use, you can actually automate this process. If you're on Linux, you unfortunately have to do this manually, but you have to install the font that comes with power level 10K. I'm sure you could change it. And of course, they have all the instructions here you can follow. But this is one of my favorite, my go-to theme. So let's start by installing. Let's go. Okay, so I'm going to skip that part and first do just manual. So I'm going to copy this line by line. Well, let's copy the whole thing, but I'll explain line by line what's happening. Okay, let's go back. So we're cloning at a depth of 1, right, this repo into home directory, power level 10K, new directory. And then we are adding the sourcing of the theme file into our ZSRC file at the very end, right? So this will append this echo, will essentially print this out. And then this routing, right, this double arrow is going to append it to our ZSRC file. So if it was one arrow, it would overwrite everything, which obviously we don't want. despite as basic as our zshrc file is. So we want the double arrow, which will append it to the end. Right, so let's run those two commands, and you can see we can run them back to back, and we are in business. So I think the other thing we have to do, just to double check, is I believe we have to actually set it to our theme. Yep. Let's see, where's my Zish? Okay, I think there. Yep, and then yeah, again, there's a homebrew way. I just run it through the GitHub approach. Okay. This is where I may have should have just copied this. Okay. Okay. So yes, this was the manual way. I apologize. You actually want to do it this way because we're using omyzish. So let's do that again. Let's clone the repo. Mostly for illustrative purposes, we've already actually technically done this, except now we are moving it to a custom. Let's just clear this up and make it easy. Let's cancel that. Let's go. Let's do that. Let's copy. Okay, so what are we doing this time? Again, we're copying at a depth of 1 this repo into Zish custom if we've set it, which is either, and if it's not been set by us, and I don't think I've set it up, it'll default to my home directory, my Zish directory that we set up earlier, custom, right? So under custom, because this comes separate from the built-in themes that omyzish ships with. So note that this is taking care of the first part of the directory. And then under that, we have themes and power level 10K. So that's the big difference between this one and manually installing it. Manually installing it keeps it at the at the root of our home directory. Okay, so let's make sure we're back in our home directory. Let's run that again. Okay. I guess that has already been taken care of. Okay, let's just do a sanity check. Yep, okay, so we already have it. Now the next step is we actually need to set our theme, right? Now let's go back into our zshrc file and our theme. I'll just copy that and remove this. Okay. All right, we have to reinstall. There we go, something happening. Let's see. So yeah, this is the first time installation. So if you have installed remember, if we go back to our instructions, you need to go back one more. Okay. If we go back to our instructions, it first recommended installing the recommended font. If you're able to, if not, this is the stage. So because we already installed it, we're actually able to see a diamond. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to see gibberish. This is part of why you need the Meslo nerd font that it recommends. So yep, I can see it. I think this is I'm just gonna allow this. Okay, yep, I can see the lock. I can see this. If not, just to show you, I'm just gonna say no. Yeah, okay, this clearly doesn't look like a Python logo, so no. Do all these icons show up? Yeah, so icons actually all show up and there is no overlap. So, but let's just say no for purposes. So it should really kick us out and then allow us to cut to, I think, install, but let's just do this. Restart from the beginning, quit and do nothing. Let's just quit and do nothing, okay? There you go. So this is the default configuration of this shell. Excuse me, not the shell, this terminal theme. Thank you. Lots of words. Okay. So one thing we can do just to show you again is we can run pk10 configure is how we get back into the configuration. Yeah, so you can see that It's single line. We have time. I think this is the code. Yeah, this is the code for the last command. So if I just do like echo hello, right? So while I'm here, sig int is because I did a uh, control C, right? So if I want to, if I no longer want to run this command, I want to do and get out. Yes, I can like type it all out, or better yet, you do control C and you'll exit out of that command and go back to the prompt. And you can notice that it has its own separate code, right? So if I do echo hello, you get a 185, 185. Well, maybe that's the history. Okay. Right. Let's get back to configuring, right? So where are we at? We are now configuring our theme. Yep. So in this case, I'll just say yes. I'll say yes, say yes, say yes. Pick and choose. I really like the lean one. I'm going to go with one. Unicode. Let's go with Unicode. I like the 8 colors. So 2. I like 24-hour format. So 2. So you can see this is an interactive setup. Prompt type, 1 line, 2 lines. I'm a big fan of 2 lines. Just separate it out. I like a clean look. No frame. Yep. Right. Nope. No frame at all. So I'm going to go with number 1. Compact, sparse. I'm going to pick sparse. We have beautiful resolutions today. No reason to squint at everything. I'm a fan of no icons, mostly because it makes it copying and pasting much easier. And also concise. Again, copying and pasting, right? No need to have English language or displays. Transient prompt. I'm going to say no for this for now. There we go. Instant prompt. I'm just going to keep this. I'm going to make this for verbose for demonstration purposes. Okay. Do we want to apply changes to this zshrc file? Yes, this is going to set up our, let's take a look what our zshrc file looks like now. Right. So it's added some where we're sourcing a P10K instant prompt file if it, assuming it exists. Nothing changed here. This was our path. This was our installation of Oh My Zish, our theme. Plugins have not changed. Sourcing has not changed. Our aliasing hasn't changed. And if you just go to the very bottom, so essentially so here's the thing to note. Power level 10K comes with its own configuration file in the form of P10K Zish. And essentially that's what this is doing. If it exists, it's going to source it. We'll take a quick look, but not something for us to necessarily dive into at this stage. So this has, okay, yep, it's probably not the best way to do it. Let's just go into the file itself. There we go. Okay, so this is about, yeah. So you right away, again, this is just me typing Shift G to go to the very bottom, and then double G to go to the top, just Vim, for those new to Vim. But yeah, so we can see this is 1,645 lines of configurations. And again, this is the power of leveraging the community. So I can just exit out. I don't want to install anything or change anything. So that's it. So effectively, if we think about it, our zshrc file has been extended by sourcing another 1,650 lines, right, of configurations that allows us to do so much more. Okay, so let's getting out of that again. So now note that I have time taken 13 seconds, 31 seconds, because I just had it as I was walking through this. So now if I go to my Zish, here is now my clean version, right? I can see it's master. I can see that I'm in the folder. I don't think I've changed anything here. So this is pretty plain. We can play with this, so on. But there's something still missing, right? So as I'm typing, or let's say I want to type the previous command, yes, I know I can go arrow up, arrow down to traverse my history, but I want to do something better. Like, why can't it start to show me what this is, right? So what's responsible for that is the Zish highlighting. So if we go to Zish highlight, Actually, auto suggestions, I think, is the one I'm looking for. Should I go to suggestions? So this is the plugin. As a note, it doesn't come as part of Oh My Zish, so it's its own separate thing that we have to install. Let's go to installing it. Okay, we're using Oh My Zish, so let's copy this and we'll walk through what this line is doing. Let's go back to our home directory and start from there, right? One of the things by the way, one of the things I really, really love about Power Level 10K is that it's super, super fast. I've done the most not quite scientific benchmarking, but I just like a really fast terminal experience, and that's what I get with that. All right, so we're cloning this another repo to either a Zish custom if we've set it up, or the default location, which is the Oh My Zish folder, custom directory. And then, of course, this is now a plugin, not a theme. And of course, the plugin name, Zish Auto Suggestions. So let's do that. This is probably not beneficial because I've done this before. Interesting. Okay, so let's assume we actually copied it and installed it for the first time. Now, going back to instructions. Now, note, all we have to do is just add it to plugins, and it should automatically pick it up upon a new terminal sessions restart. So let's do that. Let's go to our Zish. Yep, Zish RC file. Let's go to plugins. Plugins. Okay. Now let me save this. So see, the moment I start typing, now you see the difference. I start getting auto suggestions for my previous commands in history. This makes it so nice because now I just have to either do the arrow, the right arrow, or I hit tab. Actually, no, I think we can see. Let's go back to here, echo, right? Let's see what other, I'm trying to think of what other command I did. Yeah, TLDR. And so you start typing, you get the auto suggestion. And if you've done some more, or there's some other commands, like maybe you have something else, which I currently don't have, or like history, HS, right? Let's see, LS. Nope, I don't have much history at this stage, but that's the beauty of the auto suggestion. It's such a productivity boon. You don't have to keep thinking like what you did. And yes, of course, there's other ways of doing it that we'll get into in a future video. But that's essentially what the Zish auto suggestion does. Now, the thing I wanted to get back to is the highlighting. So the highlighting, right? So note something in our command so far is that it's still pretty plain, as in the command that we're typing out is quite plain, right? So maybe how do I know, let's say like I make a mistake, a typo, and I do this. Obviously, echoes is not a command, it doesn't exist. And running it, I find out too late. But imagine a much longer command. This is just not a good experience. So how do we improve this? Well, Zish syntax highlighting to the rescue. And of course, I think these two were actually inspired by Fish Shell, which is another shell that you can explore. I won't cover it here, but let's go back and copy and install the Zish syntax highlighting. Yep. Okay. In my case, I have, I guess, somehow already set up Oh My Zish already. Ooh, I think I know what I did wrong. Okay. Yep. Okay. So in my case, it's already installed. Let's copy the Zish syntax highlighting. Let's go into our vimrc file. Let's make some change. Plugins. All right. Let's save that. Let's set it up. Okay, now let's start typing. See how it's immediately red? Oh, that's because there's no E command. There's no EC command. There's no H command, but there is an echo command, right? And then there is no echoes command. So this is a beautiful, yep, there you go. So this is not what I want because my history was telling me so. But if I do this, you can see that will work. Versus if I do this, well, it being red is indicating that it's not able to find it. There you go, command not found. So this is our terminal, which at this point, we have customized. Of course, you could pick any theme that you like. I just like the power level 10K. There's a bunch of great ones that, you know, to your preference, but our terminal looks so much better than it did just a few moments ago, right? Just zooming back up to this one, let's do my Zish, right? So from here, we have gone to something with a bit more detail. Yes, we will work on getting some more in the actual directory, but what do we have? We have a Git information, we have time ran, for example, like let's say I sleep for 5 seconds as an example. So it's just gonna not do anything for 5 seconds. There we go, right? If I start typing hello there and I do Command C, right, it'll show that there was an interrupt, a signal interrupt, right, which is me running my Control C and exiting out. And I can now tell if I'm writing a command that actually exists or doesn't exist. And of course, I get history benefits. Now, of course, the commands I've been running are pretty short, but you can imagine if you're running something much more complex, right? So, or something with many more lines, right? Like, so for example, the Git, I can just go back and do this, right? This is so much better than trying to go up and down. Yes, yes. You can do like history. You can search, right? Let's say git clone. You can see all your history. And of course, oh yeah, note that even though we've run a couple of git clones, we only find the last one in our history. And that's because if I do my history, I believe it's because it is resetting every time I run exec zish and I rerun zish. All right. Want to make sure we have covered it all. All right, so let's go back to our presentation and wrap up. Now that we've done the show part of our video today, let's do a recap. What did we do? We walked through making sure that we installed the latest Z Shell version, which is very specific to our Mac, but whether you're running Linux out there, it's always good to check to see that whatever comes out of the box, you are using the latest. If not, make sure you install it. We made sure also we updated our shell to use the latest, the one, in our case, the one that we installed through Homebrew. Once we had that installed, we set up a very basic zshrc file. We set up the OhmyZish framework, which would allow us access to the community-driven themes and plugins. We set up a theme, in my case, power level 10K, after we explored a few of the themes that come out of the box with OhmyZish. And then we started setting up some plugins, right? In my case, we did the Zish syntax highlighting and Zish auto suggestions, because those two are ones that I always install out of the box, and they do not come with OhmyZish. You always have to install them separately. But everything else, you can install from there and get going. Again, hopefully in this video, you saw how painful or time consuming this is to set up and then be able to replicate it again and again and again, right? So I promise you, there are definitely a whole bunch of automated ways of doing this. We'll see that later in this series. Again, in my process, I have this down to like a 5-minute, one command go to set everything up as I want, right? Setting up Zish, setting up all my Zish, setting up all my themes, all my plugins, and getting its exact customization. For me, a big thing is having a consistent developer experience across all my machines is very important that I strive for. And that's something that hopefully you'll be able to get to at some point. But that's it. We've set up our first part, our terminal is ready, and we can continue on our developer productivity. So with that, thank you so much for watching this video. If you stayed till the end, I'll see you in the next video.